I know we said this, but I'm going to say it again because this will be for the recording. We're broadcasting live from Austin, Texas today. Last week we were in San Diego. This time we're in Austin, Texas. Things are feeling good. We have a relatively abbreviated agenda here. Also, if anyone is in there that's not on mute, if you could go on mute real quick, that would be really helpful. We have a relatively abbreviated agenda here, and then we're also going to get into some questions. But one topic that I've been talking about a little bit, but now we have some serious data to go through, something that I'd love to encourage people to think about. And so, as you know, a lot of the, what's the topic called? The topic we got here? Ooh, it's such a catchy name. The Attribution Mirage. And then it says marketing teams are being led astray and think they're being data driven. And now we have like a pretty large scale data, both in our business and in another B2B SaaS company. And we're going to continue to build data and continue to build this path so that marketers can take this data, they can collect it themselves, they can go to their company, they can show them what buyers are actually telling them about where they're discovering them, which will allow executives to help them change the way that they do marketing to things that actually work, that are actually effective, that actually help customers. So I have a very good passion, very deep passion about doing this. So let's get into it. What we did, for those of you that don't know, just a background here, somewhere between 45 and 60 days ago, I added a field in our form. I didn't add one. I took a field out that was unnecessary. I put a new field in that said, how did you hear about us? It's required. It's a free text field. That is where the form where all of our revenue comes through. People submit that, they go through a sales process, they become customers. Just like if a SaaS company had a demo form, putting this here. It said, how did you hear about us? Every person that submitted that form had to fill it out. The qualitative stuff that we're getting out of here, I would consider groundbreaking stuff. People really don't understand the amount of insights that are coming in here and if they saw them, how much different their marketing strategy would be if they actually got this data and it's honestly sitting right in front of them. All they had to do was put this field in the form. Companies are out there spending $500,000, $100,000, $500,000, some enterprise company, probably millions of dollars on attribution software. And what we're doing is literally just asking customers where they heard about us and getting way better insights than that software. And so let's get into the details here. My belief is that the current standards of marketing measurement are simply inadequate and are not representing how modern B2B buying processes actually happen. And so when you get into it, the data that we collected over the past, 45, 60 days, 128 high intent conversions on our website, which generated 31 high intent revenue opportunities, which are otherwise known as sales qualified opportunities that we win at about 30%. And so we're going to look at this in two angles, both at the top of the funnel, quote unquote, top of the funnel, high intent conversion, and then also at the qualified ops stage. So what you have here is basically what the attribution software is telling us versus what our customers are telling us are completely different. Attribution software, out of the 128 high intent leads on our website that came through, attribution software reports 72% of those high intent leads were sourced via organic search or direct traffic. If you run the same analysis in your business, you're going to get almost the exact same data because I've done it 25 times and you basically get the same amount. So somewhere between 60 and 90% of your high intent leads are going to get attributed to organic search or direct traffic. Not because that channel is what drove the actual action, but that's the place where buyers pass through when they are ready to buy. So 72%, attribution software says 72% came from those two channels. However, when you ask the buyers what they say, 82% of the buyers say that they self-report that they discovered our brand or our company through social media, podcast, community, or word of mouth. 82%. Completely. And so if you didn't have that data point, which most software companies do not have right now because they don't ask that question, they don't measure it, how much different would your strategy be if you didn't have that insight? You'd be investing in SEO. You'd be unclear on what things are actually driving outcomes for you. You would be probably stuck running single channel lead gen because you don't know how to do the attribution or you don't have the insights to do that, which is what most companies do. And then if you had that insight and okay, I'll get a little bit deeper into it. let's go further. What else we got here? So if you break it down, here's another insight. The headline here says customers aren't discovering us in search, it's just what's being measured. And so if we look, only 3% of sales qualified opportunities report discovering our brand in organic search. Meanwhile, attribution software reports that 69% of our SQOs come from SEO. We did this, and I'm like, people are looking, oh, Chris, at Refine Labs, like your marketing strategy is different, your ACV is higher, blah, 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 blah. We did this with a 50K ACV velocity software product over the past 45, 60 days. The data is almost exactly the same. And so the things that are getting missed here, like totally not measured, are podcast, word of mouth, community, which are our number 2, 3, and 4 contributions to qualified pipeline and revenue inside of our company. None of those 3 things are ever going to get measured by attribution software. And then the number 1 for us is social media, which is being underreported by about 70%. And then we have this big line for organic and direct of what attribution software is telling us, like 100 buyers for organic and direct from attribution software, and 1 buyer reports that they actually discovered us in search. And so what I'm suggesting here is that people think about attribution in 2 levels. You have on the lower level, what most B2B companies measure right now. You have multi-touch attribution software, and you're going to capture the path of conversion. What channel did they come from? What thing did they convert on? And that's a really awesome insight. It's a really important insight. But most often, you're going to get search or direct traffic. And you know, as a B2B buyer, that that's not where you discover the brands. You discover them somewhere else, and then you end up there. And so the second level is going to be dark social attribution. Self-reported by the customer. You can run win analysis. You can run surveys. There's plenty of ways that you can measure it. It just doesn't require software. And so then up there, you start to have a contribution of what are the things that are actually driving buyers into buying cycles. Because up there, in the places that we're talking about here in dark social, there is no buying intent. People are learning, people are discovering, people are researching, but they're not in intent channels. And if you try and settle them there, you're going to fail. And so being able to have a different strategy and a different measurement mechanism up there, I think, is super important. I think there's one more insight, and then we're going to open this up to questions here. So, we got a couple of good ones here. So insight number 1 is what I did was I looked at the attribution that came through multi-touch attribution software, and then I compared it one by one. I did this on the plane this morning, one by one, manually compared between that versus what the customer wrote where they discovered us, and then tried to figure out how many matched. So on the form conversion, just at like what I consider a high intent lead, on the form conversion, there was 79% of the time it didn't match. Different data 79% of the time. And then if you look at it at sales qualified opportunity, after it's gone through a couple filters, some spam has been removed, spam or unqualified stuff has been removed, and then you get to high intent opportunities or SQOs. 93% of them didn't match. And so companies are out here following attribution software, thinking that they are ultra data driven, and they're being led astray. So I'll pause there. There's probably a bunch of topics in here. Would love to go deeper. This is probably the meat of this episode. I'm very passionate about this. And also, like, this is a major discovery, right? Like, it feels so simple to be like, oh, like, why don't we just ask our customer? But surprisingly, like, almost nobody does it.
All right, Wesley has a question. I'm going to bring you on, Wesley, to ask it live. Everyone else, drop your questions, and we'll keep this going. You're on, Wesley.
Hey, how's everyone?
Wesley, what's up? Good to have you here.
Yep. So my question is really in terms of like large organizations, KPIs are the thing that everyone is worried about. And if the KPI is really just to keep the lowest CPL as possible, how would you make it evident to the organization that the marketing tactics that they're doing, especially from a B2B approach, isn't effective?
Yeah, so
they're just basing it on CPL, because like the problem is that they skew the data at the same time. Like as soon as the ads go over, let's say 20 cents in terms of the CPL, then they put it on pause, and then they change the audience or whatever to try to keep it under the CPL that they need.
20 cents?
Yeah, as soon as it goes over, let's say it's a $1.80 CPL. This is just because it's using Philippine peso. So it's, let's say if it's $5 CPL, if it goes $5.20, then they turn the ad off because they say that it's going over their CPL. And then it skews the data and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, so this is like a simple split the funnel lead gen analysis, right? So a lot of companies are running lead gen. What they don't see is that all the leads that they're collecting almost never close, but they just put all of the MQLs in one bucket. And so they just look at all the MQLs in one bucket, and they have whatever enterprise company, 100,000 leads. And what they don't realize is that there's one source over here that only has 80 leads that drive most of their revenue. And so by looking at it by lead source from each individual ad channel and going through, you'd be able to calculate, how many of these leads do we actually win? This is fast. It's actually a fascinating data point. Like, we're in an enterprise company. Like, I'd guess that nobody in your company has actually done this before, which is crazy. There are like, $1 billion plus revenue organizations that haven't gone through this process to understand whether their leads are actually closing from certain sources. So you can look at Facebook, you can look at LinkedIn, you can look at each specific content syndication vendor you have. You can look at each, it's in enterprise companies, 100% lead gen direct attribution tracked, and then look at it. How much do they convert? What's the cost per lead? What's the cost per sales qualified opportunity? What's the customer acquisition cost? How much sales team's time is being spent following up with these leads? All of those different things. So there's plenty of data and instruction on how to run that analysis, and then you show it to people. Like, this is what we do for a company. And so we'll go in, 100 million ARR company, ask us to do this analysis. We go and do it inside of Salesforce. It takes us 4 weeks. We pull out all this data. We go and show their CRO and their CEO and their CMO. And they're like, holy shit, like we spent $700,000 on LinkedIn ads last year, and we got one customer for 40K ARR. Holy shit, we spent $1.2 million on Google paid search last year, and we got 900K in revenue, but most of it was branded search that we would have probably gotten anyway. Oh shit, like we spent $100,000 a month on content syndication last year, and our customer acquisition cost payback period is 49 months. Like, I'm not making this stuff up. This is real stuff. And so they have all of their advertising dollars spent generating all these leads. And then the way that they're actually getting revenue is that people are just through word of mouth, through general, just like market category dynamics, are coming to their website saying, hey, I'd love to talk to your sales rep, and buying. And so all of their marketing dollars get wasted creating metrics, when I think that all the marketing dollars should be reallocated to content that drives more people in that actually buy. And so that's done split the funnel. There's one other thing that I want to get in here just to make sure that people have it. This is more for the audience than for you, Wesley, but then we can go back, and if you have a follow-up, we can talk through it. Is that if you are a growth stage B2B company, and this is basically what happens, growth stage companies get together and they're like, oh, look at what Salesforce is doing. Look at what Goldman Sachs is doing. Look at what Oracle is doing. Look at what SAP is doing. Let's run their model. I heard their CMO talk at a conference. Let's run this high volume lead gen model. Let's get our ebooks together. Let's run marketing automation. Let's create hundreds of thousands of leads every year and just push them through. The problem is that it works for enterprise organizations because they own the category. So they're getting business. It doesn't matter what they do. Imagine being a marketer at Salesforce. It doesn't matter what you do for the next 5 years, Salesforce is going to grow. But for you, at your 25 million ARR company that has big growth targets, doesn't have the budget or the category or the organic market demand, and then you go out and start doing that. Really expensive, really inefficient. You don't hit growth targets. You just cannot copy and paste a model from a big enterprise company that owns a category and drop that into a 25, it doesn't even matter. 100 million doesn't matter. Like a growth stage company, it just doesn't work like that. So, Wesley, I went on a little sidetrack there, but would love to, if you have a follow up on CPL, let's do that.
I just wanted to mention, because to your point, so the way that it's currently being done is they're trying to keep the low CPL. We mentioned to look at the LTV, because even if you pay double of what if your target CPL is $5, but you pay $10, but that $10 lead generated massive income on the B2B side. Let's say they're an aggregator for some type of leads or whatever. It's worth paying the extra. But this is why this is all about. But they don't get that. They keep saying that the CPL has to be low. So if there's there's a magic sauce to get that point across, that it's okay to spend a little bit more to test and to see if it does generate quality leads compared to generating loads of leads that don't even bring in any revenue.
What matters here is customer acquisition cost payback period in a recurring revenue model. And so it doesn't matter. Like I'm over here, like all the companies that we work with, that I tell that I go and do this analysis and I show executives their CAC payback is 48 months. They're pumped to collect $50 leads. They love it, but they win like 1 in every 5,000. And so they have a huge sales expense. They have a huge SDR expense. They have a huge database expense. They have a huge sales overhead expense. They have a huge opportunity cost expense of what they could be doing with all of those resources and money instead of doing that. But they're pumped to have a $50 lead because they just think all MQLs are the same. And we're over here, and like for the same company that was like obsessed to getting $50 leads, now we get them $900 leads. But instead of winning 1 out of every 5,000, we win 1 out of every 9. And so in that case, way less sales resources, way less SDR resources. Cost per lead is higher, but you're winning 1 out of 9 instead of 1 out of 5,000. Customer acquisition cost is way lower. It's within an acceptable range. It can actually scale. If you're winning 1 out of 5,000 leads, good luck scaling that. The amount of headcount that you need to support that model is it's almost impossible. So by centering on business metrics, this is like, Wesley, I'm kind of coming out of the gate hot on this one, but like, this is what most companies do, especially enterprise organizations that have like siloed marketing functions where they try and break down into an assembly line. Like, okay, so all we need to do is, if marketing collects $3 leads and then we convert 1 out of every 1,000 with our SDR team, and then we win 20% of those, we'll hit our model. And so it's just like a very antiquated demand waterfall way of looking at marketing.
All right, Adam had a great observation. I'm going to bring him on to keep the conversation going. And David, you're up next.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
We got you. What's up, Adam?
All right. Hey, so I just commented in the comment section earlier that I'm convinced people are just lazy and they come through search even if they know your brand, because it's easier than remembering a URL. And I say that as
everyone does that.
Yeah, it's.
I don't think it's because they're lazy. It's just because that's the way what people do when they're ready to buy. It's like,
yeah, I guess I shouldn't say lazy. It's just easy.
Path of least resistance. Yeah.
And I'm just a reformed SEO guy from earlier in my career, so it took a long time to like deprogram that from myself. And I see my company's brand is one of the biggest drivers of search volume for us that that you can see, because of course Google hides a lot of that from you now, but that just reinforces that to me, that people are just easier than remembering the URL or bookmarking you.
100%. And so I'm encouraging companies that do a lot of SEO to put this in place. It could completely change your strategy. Imagine like companies in there thinking 80% of our revenue and our leads are coming through organic and direct traffic. Let's keep running SEO. And then you put this on your form and you're like, oh, actually 20% are coming from communities, 15% are coming from word of mouth, 35% are coming from social media, and then 6% are coming from search. Maybe we should have a different marketing. I know that we're getting a lot of traffic and we're getting, you said reformed SEO marketer. So I imagine that you kind of stumbled on some of these conclusions as well.
Yeah, I've actually not to toot my own horn, but I've had that question on our website forms and on our RFQ response forms for like 5 years now. But it's just going back through and just collating the data and doing something with it is what you have to actually bother with. Mm-hmm. I think it's easy to put that on there, then it's easy to never do anything with it again. So you need to make sure you keep up with it.
I look at everyone and it's like some companies use a drop down, and I think a drop down actually can create some biases, right? There's not a lot of options. You might not get the amount of detail that you want. We use a free text field.
See, that's a big takeaway that I got from this is the free text field. I've always used drop downs. So
yeah, and so people are like, have been listening to Chris on the podcast for the past 9 months. Things are so great. Now I'm listening. Now I saw you in Revenue Collect. If you're getting like true detailed stuff that you don't get with a drop down, that's why I'm recommending the free text. It requires a little bit of work in order to take the free text and then through automation and some manual work, convert it into categories. Mm-hmm. But I flew on a plane here and did it in like an hour on a plane with bad internet. So like, it's not a big lift to take the data from free text and move it into categories.
Yeah. It's gonna be my next experiment to do and see how it changes things for us.
Cool. Well, glad you put that in place. Good stuff.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Megan.
Thanks, Adam. Well, that was sort of David's question. Have you cracked the code on what is the best format for this question?
Yeah.
Open-ended?
So I believe that the required free text field is the winner here because you get the level of qualitative detail on the front, and it's pretty easy to process and categorize for like more quantitative analysis later. And so I believe that that's the winning format, and you get the most level of detail, you get the most insights.
All right. 30 minutes on that topic.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. Transition.
Yeah, we have a few questions that were submitted in advance, but do you want to tackle agenda item number 2?
Let's go to a couple questions. We'll come back to this.
All right. Anna had to drop off, but I promised her I'd ask this question for her. How do you think about the stages of awareness and creating content for each stage? Is this something you think about for Refine Labs? Is this something you coach businesses on? How do you recommend matching your content to stages? This is like problem aware solution.
I just like literally never think about this. And so I think that the idea of mapping content to certain stages creates the wrong type of content, the wrong mindset going into content, because you're like, oh, like I need this person to move from solution aware to whatever consideration or whatever the stages are. I'd much prefer to put out a bunch of content that people get a ton of value from. And then basically I split it into 2 places. I have like, I guess category content would be a good way to look at it. Why should people consider this category? Where is the world going? What are the big problems that are going on? What is the reason to prioritize this in your business right now? What are the risks if you do not do this? That's all the awareness content that you need, right? So some companies or some marketers get stuck and they're like, oh, let me write this blog to teach someone about this problem. And I just think that it can be a little bit more fluid than that when you really understand the buyer. And then I have the entire other side, which I consider pure buyer enablement. B2B buyers can make buying decisions without your sales team. If you let them, if you give them the information that they need and you put it in the places where they pay attention, they can make decisions on their own. Pricing is why our sales cycles are so short and our win rates are so high. People know what the price is before they ever talk to us. People have consumed our content for a long time before they ever talk to us. Usually they've shared the content with other people on their executive team and stakeholders. So other stakeholders inside of the business, the buying group, is also on board. And so all that stuff is happening in the background. We're not in sales conversations doing that. We're not talking to people that aren't ready to buy. And so you have content about why people should prioritize whatever you're doing inside of their business. And then you have all of the stuff that they need to move through a buying process on their own. And that's the content strategy that I would put in place today. So is there some stuff, like, I guess if you think through like my content about, companies overspend by 5x on Google ads, like, could you map that to some type of thing like being problem aware or being solution aware? Sure. But when you think about my mindset, when I create it, there's like nothing about it, right? So you can always take content and retroactively fit it into some type of model about the stages of awareness. But I believe that it's way more important on your mindset before you create it. What is your intent? Why are you creating what you're creating? Is your intention to help someone, or is your intention to try and move someone through a funnel?
All right, there's a few other questions that were submitted in advance. They actually are about agenda item number 2.
Cool.
So let's get into that, because I think that'll cover a bunch. And then we'll get in a few more questions before we wrap up tonight.
Yeah, so let's go through it. So I talked to a lot of different companies, and one company shared today their like monthly marketing like executive update. So it's a 21 slide deck, and they were like, "Hey, would really love your thoughts on this deck." And so I went through it and I looked, and I'll get into some of the details, but my response back to them was like, I just went through a 21 slide deck, and there was not one mention of pipeline, and there was not one mention of revenue. And we spent like the first 10 slides with top of funnel, fluffy marketing vanity metrics, and when I see those in a monthly report, the only reason that they're there is to hide that the actual marketing isn't driving business outcomes. When you're telling me that organic search traffic went up 18% from like 6,000 to like 6,100 last month, it's a clear sign that marketing probably isn't working. And so when you think about when you're reporting on a monthly basis, who are you reporting to? This is an executive report. It's going to the C-suite. So if you're a director of demand gen, if you're a marketing manager, I think this applies if you're a CMO that's reporting up to the board too, is that when you're reporting up, you need to think about it in business metrics. And so the things that I'm thinking about are how much revenue did we generate last month, last quarter, whatever the period we're reporting on? How much pipeline did we generate? How much is that pipeline growing quarter over quarter, month over month? How much is it costing us to generate that pipeline? Are we being more efficient? What are the major growth levers that we could go and put our foot on the gas? Where are the big opportunities? Where is the stuff coming from? Is it a podcast? Is it Facebook ads? Is it LinkedIn ads? Is it Google search? Is it CRO? What most marketers don't know which one it is. So they just end up placing bets all over the place. And they keep doing stuff. Like, there's usually 1, 2, 3 things that are the big opportunities. If you can see them and you can capitalize, you can really get it. And so as a marketer, you need to drive the executive team to know what those priorities are. If it's Facebook is driving $10 in qualified pipeline for every dollar we spend there, and we're going to win those at 31%, and then we're going to have a customer acquisition cost payback period of 4 months on the advertising, or 300% ROAS. If we're going to do that, and that's the data, I want the entire executive team to know that the next time that we're going to put $50,000 a month into an investment of marketing, that's the place where it's going. And I want them to know what the projected results are out of that. And so what I found is that a lot of executives don't know these things. They're not enough in the details, and they don't get reported enough. That as a marketer, you need to drive the priorities up. You know that you're in the details, you know the things best. So you need to figure out how to position it at a business level in pipeline, revenue, CAC, sales cycle length, growth rate, scalability, those types of things, and then present it in a way with here's the current performance, here are the big opportunities, and then potentially you can think about like risks or other things like that. And so when you think about a monthly performance report at the executive level, like that's all you need. Like I'm sure there's CMOs that are going to be listening to this podcast afterwards. I'm sure there's CEOs, like go and ask your CMO how much, if they care, how much your SEO traffic went up last month, or if if your LinkedIn post or LinkedIn page got 33 more followers than last month, or if your rankings went up by whatever SEMrush tells you your ranking goes up a little bit. At the executive level, what they want to know is what are the outcomes and what are driving it, not what the vanity metrics are. So unless the vanity metrics help you tell a story about why it's actually moving the needle, and that's the place to insert them. So, and I'm not even sure I would consider them vanity metrics anymore, but like the attribution reports are really helpful. Screenshots and social mentions are very helpful. You can pull plenty of quantitative data. Like the data, if you look at the chart of our podcast audience growth or our LinkedIn audience growth or the amount of people in our company that post on LinkedIn, it maps with our pipeline growth. And so there are a lot of metrics that people think are vanity, but when you put them in the context of results, they're no longer vanity metrics. So I'm sure there's going to be a couple questions on here, but I keep it simple here. If you wanted to go a little bit more into detail, you could be looking at it in like 3, 6, 12-month periods of time too. One of the things that I want the CMOs that we work with to know is that you don't just flip a switch and turn on a new ad channel and get results that month. It's going to take 3 to 6 months to really iron out and get that thing running well. So if you're planning on having Reddit or Twitter or YouTube deliver a major pipeline in the second quarter of next year, we better be putting budget to that in Q4. And so being able for people to see some of the longer term things and understand realistically how it works back in order to hit goals is also an interesting insight to have. I'm not sure that goes in a monthly report. That probably goes in a quarterly or a semi-annual type or planning type of report. But those are some of the other things that I'm thinking about.
Our good friend Jess had a question.
Let's
Jess,
do it.
It's been a minute. Welcome back.
Are you on the beach?
I've got it from David. It's a Mirage. It's on theme.
Wow, that's awesome.
Is it the attribution?
It's the Attribution Mirage.
Yeah, we're nerds. With this, what would you be showing for the scalability bit that you mentioned?
So, a couple examples here. If you're just in pure like Google search, I would go in and I would say, okay, our CAC for this campaign or ad group or keyword level at the moment is 7 months. And so advertising CAC at 7 months is within our target range. It's not like amazing, but that's what you're going to get out of Google search these days. And so it's 7 months, but our search impression share is only 18%. And so if we wanted to, bid more, spend more, work on the quality score and all that stuff to get this from 18% to 75%, then we could probably 5x our results. So Google search is a very easy, obvious channel because it's basically linear while you do it in the right way. Most companies don't do it in the right way, so they don't get the linear result, but it can be. But then once you max out the search volume, you got to know when to stop. So Google is an interesting one. If you think about like a Facebook or a LinkedIn or otherwise, I'm looking at a combination of what is our average cost to get a high intent conversion, especially on LinkedIn. You can look at it through custom conversions. So let's say we have custom conversions. We're getting high intent demos at qualified accounts for $800 on LinkedIn ads. And based on our funnel metrics for our 50K ACV product, we're pumped to have that because we're going to win those at 10%. And so then we have that, but we see that our frequency metrics over time are like really low. We're only spending $5,000 a month to get that done. So we're only getting like six leads a month, but the frequency is way down. So if we increase the budget and increase the creative to max out the frequency, we think that we could spend $50,000 with that audience size. And you can social is a little bit different. It's kind of like you got to push the boundaries and you got to test. It's a little bit less clear than search, but those are like frequency, audience size, spend are some of the ways that I look at social. And then if you think paid social specifically, and then if you think about any like major organic channel community, a major organic channel that works really well today, organic social community, events, podcast, those types of things. The scalability of those ones are obvious. It's just about the way to increase the scalability is not to spend more money. It's to increase your frequency and the quality of the information. What do you think? Got any follow-ups? Anything that you were thinking?
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, I think so. It's kind of a way to show where you think there's potential room for growth if you were to spend more money, that, you know, if you haven't completely tapped out a channel as far as frequency, or is it more that side?
Totally, yeah. And so having the confidence to go in and be like, at the moment, we're spending $25,000 a month on Facebook and Instagram ads. At the moment, over the course of a month, each person in our audience has seen our ad 1.8 times. If we created more creative and we were able to deliver that, then we could actually show our ad 8 times to the same person because they're seeing 8 different ads. And if we did that, then we could spend whatever, 4 times as much money. So we go from 25K to 100K. We're going to do it in increments. We're going to go 25K, 50K, maybe 75, 80 to 100. We're going to work up because eventually you might hit a point. It's nice to kind of feel that out and be able to go back and be like, look, if you have a budget decision, you're trying to decide whether to build that conference booth, go and hire 5 more SDRs, hire 6 more people on the marketing team, or do this. I'm just letting you know that this is going to be the most impactful way that we could spend that money.
Is this something you probably add as like commentary or as like part of a staple of what you put in like month to month? Because obviously you don't want to put everything into the report because you want people to be actually reading it. At what point is it stuff where it's something that you should probably be working out what you should be doing next versus getting the executive board to decide for you?
So when I think about putting together a monthly report, I'm almost thinking about it like it's a business case every month. Even if I'm not like speaking in front of people and they're going to make a decision on the money, I'm helping people understand what the performance is, where we're headed, what the next priorities are, what the blockers are, and how we could remove those blockers. And so when you think about it, like the deck I'm preparing, or PDF or whatever you want to look at, it's like less than 10 slides.
Yeah.
So it's our job as marketers, and I think marketers struggle with this, I just see it a lot, to simplify to what are the most important things that these people need to know in order. And so most marketers try and have the executives make those choices for them, when I know that it's way better if you're an experienced marketer to make those choices first. So instead of these 10 things, I'm like, here are the next 3 steps that we're going to make. So it just makes it a little bit more clear. It shows conviction in the strategy. I think there's some really good things there.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Jess.
Always love having you on.
Yeah, really cracked me up on the background. Holy cow.
Salim has a question. I hope I pronounced your name right. Come on live. There we go.
Hey, yeah, you pronounced my name right. Chris, big fan.
Yeah, that camera's so dope, man.
Oh, thank you. I've been doing a lot of production work. Yeah. My question is, your videos are circulating in our team's channels all the time. Everybody's bought into it, besides the people who cut the checks and put the budgets. They're only interested in outbound lead gen, and that activity only converts at 3% to sales, which makes the marketing team look like a cost more than a part of the demand generation. So how would you approach getting such leadership to actually embrace the new way of doing things, creating content, chasing the customers where they are instead of trying to pull out a playbook from 2000?
Yeah, it's about somewhere in the range of 2007 to 2011 is the time frame where this is developed and got put into practice. So when you think about this, I like to look at it in a couple of different angles. And so there's one angle where people, like, outside of the data, outside of like us trying to convince something, just like show people what's actually going on in the world. And so some of the things that I've done here is I've created surveys about how buyers want to buy and gotten decision makers at all of our top accounts to fill out the survey about how they want to buy, and then show people how misaligned it was to how we were trying to do marketing and sales. So that's a potential one. I've brought CEOs before to customer or prospect accounts and shown them why that segment is a terrible fit for us, why it's a waste of time to target there, why our implementations always fail there, whatever you're trying to show. So there's, like, whether it's quantitative survey data or qualitative in person with the customer, to show people how people are actually discovering things, how they want to buy, how much word of mouth matters, and where they spend their time talking to their peers. So getting people on board to try and go with how the world actually works today. Executives don't get that. It's literally just the truth. And so for whatever reason, they think that B2B buyers are still like B2B buyers in 2011, where they get all their information from trade publications and conferences, where they need to have a sales rep talk to them at the beginning of the process because they hide all the information. There's no review sites. They can't get in touch with their peers. So the only way to get the information is to talk with a sales rep. And it's just not how the world works anymore. So your company can keep trying to sell that way, but what's going to happen is that your buyers are not going to go through that process. You're going to have declining sales productivity. And if one of your competitors hasn't already, that not hopefully, but they will soon, somebody's going to figure it out in the category. Like, the fact that there's some categories where no company has figured this out is wild. So that's one side of it. Like, can we help people understand how our buyers actually buy by showing them what our buyers do and what they say? And then you have a second component, which is putting together some type of business case and business data. And so at the moment, what I'm understanding, marketing generating low intent leads, you're getting those to convert at 3% to a meeting. From the meeting, from there, they're probably converting to close one opportunity somewhere between 3 and 10%. So you could go out and you could calculate your cost per lead, your cost per meeting, your cost per sales qualified opportunity, which is probably later than the meeting. And that's where most of them will fall off, is between meeting and sales qualified opportunity. That's where all the stuff falls off. And then you'll have a close one and you'll have a customer acquisition cost. You'll be able to show people what those are. And then you'll be able to show it based on lead source. So marketing teams are running this lead gen model. I mentioned it early in the episode, but how big's the company? How many people are?
So it's an industrial group with 5 business units, around $150 million in revenue a yearly.
Yeah. And so you got people coming to your website from organic market demand that are also asking to buy stuff. And those are the people that actually buy. And so I, again, run the split the funnel analysis, split it off to the lead gen stuff versus the places where buyers are actually finding you, which is going to be a high intent website conversion, and then help them see that the lead gen stuff is driving really poor ROI, typically more than 48-month CAC payback. And the organic stuff that's happening in the market based on word of mouth, based on community activity, all the things that we talk about here. And that's where people actually buy, and then try and help them say, if we stopped running the lead gen strategy, we'd be able to use our money to have more people do this. And these are the people that are actually become customers. And so that's the recommendation. I'll be honest with you, even with all that stuff, even when CEOs see that that buyers don't want to talk to their sales team in the first meeting, that buyers that, whatever, they see that buyers don't want to go through the way that we're selling, and they see the business data of how poor the lead gen model is running, some executives still won't change. And in those cases, really the recommendation is that that place is hopeless and probably move on.
I totally agree.
Cool.
By the way, your video about wrong definition of pipeline was exactly what happened 2 weeks ago, where our sales team pushed back at the low quality leads because they're not hitting their quotas.
I'm not making this stuff up. It's what happens in the world. You know what I mean? Like, people think that I'm like out here like making this stuff up. All I do is I talk to hundreds of marketers at hundreds of companies and just report on the truth that everyone knows is true, but won't admit. That's all I'm doing. But yes, I've seen that happen a bunch of times. Poor definition of pipeline at the SQL or the meeting booked or whatever. And marketing can run performance marketing and hit that metric on autopilot because it's a vanity metric. And their sales team misses quota by 40, 50, 60%. Yep, that's what happens. Well, cool, man. Appreciate that. That was some good ammo for me. And it was also like, we're going to have to get a couple of tips from you on the video. So let's get your contact info.
Thanks so much for the great question. All right, I was trying to get one more live one out tonight. I'll sneak in a pre-submitted one. This is an interesting one. So someone's posting on behalf of their boss on LinkedIn, and it's gaining a lot of traction. Do you actually recommend converting organic posts that perform well into ads? And have you ever thought about that? Any guidance on doing that well?
For sure. I think this is actually like the holy grail, might be overstated, but it's a good place to be. And so I'll just give you some background here. I would do the opposite in 2017-18 on Facebook. And so on Facebook ads, I would run paid, and I would test 10 variations of images and a bunch of different messaging, and one of them would bubble to the top, and then I'd run that on paid, and then I'd be able to, after that, post it organically to our 20, 30,000 followers. And when I posted it, it had 1,000 likes on it already because I ran it to the big audience. And so I did it in that way just because the dynamics of Facebook worked better that way back then. When we think about LinkedIn content, what you just said, I think is the best position to be in, because you basically have content that's been validated by your target market, that they engage with it, they like it, that they're commenting, that you can then convert that piece of content and move it into paid and target people that are not in your audience right now to generate awareness, to create followers, to get people generally into the ecosystem. And so I'm a big fan of that. It's something that we've suggested with my content. Frankly, we just have a lot of awareness right now and just don't need to do that. But that's something that we will definitely be testing in the future. I think it's a great move. There's some intuition about, okay, if I took this post and I converted it into paid, like, would it work? You can also just test it, like run a test for $100 and see what happens. But I have a pretty good sense now, especially if you're doing video marketing, about how you can take video into paid and get that to work.
All right. I have Suba, who has a question she wants to ask live, and it might be our last one.
Perfect.
As we wrap up tonight.
Hey, Chris. I'm so glad. I cannot believe that I'm talking to you. I'm a big fan. So that's it. Yeah, so we are a startup. We just closed our Series C funding. We are in the enterprise software business. We sell platforms, and our annual revenue is around 20 to 25 million range, and we are looking at double the growth next year. But we have a sales team that fundamentally believes that the leads should not come from marketing at all, right? The job of the marketing is go to events and spread the product, talk about the product, and the customer success team should go and do upsells and cross-sells. But marketing, there should be no dependency on the marketing team at all to bring any top of the funnel leads. Do you think, I know that we talk a lot about SaaS, software as a service products, but specifically for enterprise software, what is your view? I would be glad to know what you think.
Yeah. So in 2017, our marketing team was basically in this position because the marketing team didn't do demand, right? So I joined this company. The company was used to just being 100% sales driven, outbound field sales. Marketing team is focused on sales enablement, building conference booths, and maybe running a webinar occasionally and passing people bad leads. And so the sales team in that situation is like, oh, I don't need any help from marketing. I can do this all on my own, because that's what they have to do, because marketing is not really contributing at a demand level. And what we did over the course of the next 2 years was drive millions of dollars of revenue with shorter sales cycles that allowed the sales team to hit more of the sales team to hit quota. And after those 2 years, they started to understand how marketing can deliver for them. And so I think this is purely through actions that you show this, right? Like when I was doing this, our sales team didn't know that you could even do this, that marketing could deliver leads that close super fast, that close at a high rate, that we can scale them, that it's way more cost effective to do it that way. And so you got to kind of show them, right? And so when I did this, I started with a $500 budget, right? Like some companies that we work with now spend $500 $1 million a month. I started with a $500 budget, and I was able to prove that out, grow it, consistently move it to 25, 50. I think at the max we spend about $75,000 a month on media, delivering big outcomes. And so you need to show people how it can actually work. The second component of this that I think about a lot is that, like, when I went in and assessed what the marketing team was doing at that company when I worked there, like the sales team didn't want leads from marketing, because they spent the last 3 years getting webinar leads that never or trade show leads that never followed up, that did that stuff. So they're going to go to the trade show on their own. They're going to make the calls on their own. They're going to do the visits on their own, because they believe it's the path of least resistance to hitting their goals. And so if you're a marketing team that wants to change the sales team's perception of this, the way to do that is to become the fastest path and the easiest path to them hitting their goals, which is actually quite difficult, but can absolutely be done, and have done it multiple times. And so the second thing is, when you think about, if you just think about overall market dynamics, about how buyers are evolving and how they're changing, the idea that you're going to continue over the next 2, 3, 5 years to sell at conferences, to continue to do outbound cold calling and do all of this stuff, and that's going to be the primary driver of how you grow your business, is ludicrous. Buyers are going to reject that stuff so much. You need to be educated. You need to be in places where they are. They have full control over their process. And so I think there's just one of the number one drivers for me being successful is that I completely respect how people buy. I obsess about it. I understand it. I see how things go. And instead of fighting it, like most companies do, our connect rates are going down, our outbound's not working, our lead gen strategy isn't working, let's just do more of it. Let's put more money on it, fight what buyers are doing. I lean into it and I go with it, and I do that. I work and I market and I sell in the ways that they actually want to be marketed to, in the way that they want to buy. And it's just it's such a simple concept, but a lot of companies don't do it. All right, everyone. Shorter episode today because we got to go for a team dinner, but it was awesome to see everyone here. Crazy that Megan and I haven't broadcast live before, so this is awesome. And we've done 2 in a row traveling. Just so you know, like, the travel schedule isn't going to impact Demand Gen Live. We're keeping this stuff going. Love being here with all of you. Love the questions. Happy to help. I want the Mirage background ASAP. Somebody said that to me too. We're gonna put that in for our planning. And hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you back from the regular studio next Tuesday.
See you next week, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Walker, the CEO of Refine Labs. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe to the channel for more videos in the future. We're also live for Demand Gen Live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday night, which will also go on the State of Demand Gen podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify. Thanks again and see you next time.